What if I told you there was a legend so terrifying it's kept an entire village awake for generations? This is the story of La Llorona, the weeping woman, and what happened the night a young mother confronted her. Stay with me, because this tale will leave you questioning what's real and what's lurking in the shadows. The mist rose from the murky waters of the river that wound its way through the dense forest, coiling like ghostly fingers and wrapping the small village of San Mateo in an eerie embrace. The townsfolk, hardened by generations of hardship and whispered legends, never dared venture too close to the water after the sun dipped below the horizon. For they all knew the story of La Llorona, the spirit of a woman who roamed the riverbank, her mournful cries haunting the night. In the heart of the village lived Rosa, a young mother with raven hair and eyes that glistened like dark pools. To her, legends were just tales to keep children in line. Her life revolved around her two children, Javier and little Inés, and ensuring their modest home ran smoothly. Yet, even Rosa couldn't ignore the fearful whispers shared over flickering candlelight. A woman, cursed and desperate, forever searching for her lost children. The story claimed that La Llorona, betrayed by a lover, had drowned her own children in a fit of rage and grief. Now she wandered the earth, wailing for their return and dragging any child she found into the watery abyss. One fateful night, those warnings became more than stories. Rosa had just tucked Javier and Inés into bed, whispering reassurances against their unease, when a thick, unnatural fog crept into San Mateo. The wind shifted, carrying a sound that froze Rosa in place, a mournful cry that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Ay, mis hijos." The voice slithered through the wooden walls, cold and bone-chilling. Rosa's heart pounded as she tried to convince herself it was just the wind, but the sound persisted, growing louder, more sorrowful, until it felt like it was inside the room. Javier stirred in his sleep, a whimper escaping his lips. Inés clutched her blanket tighter, her small voice trembling. "Mommy," she whispered, her fear tangible. Rosa pulled them both close, whispering prayers to drown out the wail, but it was too late. The front door creaked open, though no hand had touched it. The room grew colder, and a shadow stretched across the moonlit floor, a silhouette of a woman draped in a torn, flowing gown. "Ay, mis hijos." Rosa's throat tightened as the figure stepped into the room, her face veiled by strands of wet, matted hair. Eyes like black voids locked onto Rosa, filled with despair and unquenchable rage. La Llorona reached out, skeletal fingers dripping with river water that pooled at her feet. "No!" Rosa screamed, shielding her children as the room spun and cold seeped into her very marrow. The ghost's sobs crescendoed, shaking the walls and rattling their few possessions. Rosa's prayers became desperate cries, her will to protect her children burning brighter than her fear. The walls groaned, and the air thickened with a damp, oppressive force. Rosa's cries seemed to echo back at her, as if the house itself was alive and responding to the ghost's torment. Javier began to sob, clinging to his mother's skirt, while Inés whispered incoherent prayers through trembling lips. "Leave us alone," Rosa shouted, her voice breaking as she grabbed a rosary from the nightstand. She held it up, the beads glinting in the pale moonlight. The figure froze momentarily, her wails turning into a low, guttural growl. The rosary seemed to repel her, and for a fleeting moment hope sparked in Rosa's chest. But La Llorona raised her skeletal hands, and the rosary shattered as if struck by an invisible force. The pieces scattered across the floor, and Rosa fell to her knees, clutching her children tighter. The room dimmed, the moonlight fading as the shadow of La Llorona grew larger and more menacing. Rosa's mind raced, searching for a way to save her family. She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell, of how the spirit could be momentarily appeased by invoking the names of her children. Through chattering teeth, Rosa called out, "Maria, Tomas." She repeated the names over and over, her voice growing steadier with each utterance. The figure hesitated, her wails softening into sorrowful sobs. "Maria, Tomas," La Llorona susurró, su voz llena de angustia. Her skeletal hands clutched at her chest, as if the names had struck her heart. The oppressive air lifted slightly, and Rosa saw her chance. "Please, let us be," Rosa pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "Find peace, for your children would want that for you." The ghost's form began to flicker, her outline shimmering like a reflection in disturbed water. For a moment, Rosa thought the spirit might vanish altogether. But then, La Llorona let out a final, blood-curdling scream, shaking the very foundation of the house before dissolving into a mist that seeped through the walls and back to the river. When dawn broke, Rosa and her children were found huddled together, shaken but alive. The villagers listened in stunned silence as Rosa recounted the night's events, her voice trembling with exhaustion and relief. They offered prayers and blessings, vowing to keep their children away from the river. Though the fog lifted and the river's song returned to its usual gurgling, the wail of La Llorona lingered in their dreams. Rosa knew that the spirit's torment was far from over, but she had bought her family time, a precious reprieve in a world where legends often proved too real. This was no mere story. It was a truth that lived in the water, in the shadows, and in the hearts of those who dared to challenge the past. Rosa's confrontation was a reminder that some legends are not born of imagination, but of pain too deep to stay buried.